Welcome to the stage, DJ, producer, and founder of FEMME HOUSE, LP Giobbi, and Vice President of Hardware Design at Google, Ivy Ross.
Hi everyone, welcome. So we had a great pre-call that was, they paired us up for a reason, but it really came out in that call. So we'll see where this goes. I have some pre-done questions, but we also are going to do the feminine thing and take it where it needs to go, right?
I love that.
Okay. But this idea of going from classical piano to the dance floor is so intriguing. Maybe you should talk a little bit about how you got there.
I won the lottery twice, once when I was born to my parents, and once when I found my piano teacher, Carolyn Horn. I started working with her in second grade, all the way through graduating high school, and then I went to study jazz piano performance at UC Berkeley. But I studied classical piano with her, and if she wasn't her, I don't know if I would have stayed and studied that. But she cultivated creativity in such a beautiful way. We'd play the inside of her Busendorfer piano sometimes, or we'd just dance, or sometimes we would just talk for an entire lesson. She was she's a very special person. But when I found dance music, I actually sort of had to unlearn a lot, because dance music is music for your body, and it's music to help you tap in and sort of meditate, and that's why I fell in love with dance music, is because it was, I was studying classical and jazz, and I knew what notes went over what chords, but I wasn't really tapped into my body.
What age were you when you discovered that?
I was post-college. I just graduated college. So I'd just been studying music in a very graded way, for a long time. I left my body a little bit, and dance music got me back in. So I had to, when I first started making it, I was really focused on, interesting chords, but again, not my body. So I had to really, I don't want to use the word dumb down, but I had to really, how does it feel versus up here?
Yeah, something we all have to do more of, right? Because as we just learned in the other room, AI will do all the stuff from the neck up. So it's going to be more important than ever that we do what only us humans can do. So and this is something close to my heart, you've spoken about music as medicine.
I'm so excited to talk to you about this, because I've been reading your book.
But it's one of the many things we have in common. But maybe talk a little bit about how you see it that way and how you came to that conclusion.
Well, the first way is through the live music experience. When you go to a show, you're standing in community with other people. I was raised with the opposite of religion. My parents were raised Catholic, and then they fled that as fast as they could, and so they actually didn't give me that sense of at least organized religion. So they did give me, though, the Grateful Dead, which is a religion in and of itself. So going to live shows, I felt that sense of community with other people, and just the thing, just being part of something greater than yourself, which I think is so deeply important. And so that's how, that was my way into wanting to be part of the live music experience and wanting to be a performer and help cultivate that. But there's also on the cellular level, which in your book, you talk about tuning forks. And you carry around a C and a G, which is interesting because that's a perfect fifth. Mm-hmm. And I want to know, I just started doing breath work, and my healer in Austin uses tuning forks. And something is happening, but I don't understand what, and I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so LP's referring to, I also, besides my more than full-time job at Google, co-authored a book called Your Brain on Art, How the Arts Transform Us.
It's incredible.
And it was one of those books where the publisher said, oh ladies, a book with the word art in it will never make the New York Times bestseller list. And I said, oh man, we're not trying for the New York Times bestseller list, we just want the information to get out in the world. And sure enough, 3 days in, it hit the New York Times bestseller list. But my co-author runs the art and mind lab at Johns Hopkins, my two favorite things, art and brain. And when she contacted me, cold call on LinkedIn, and said, I have the science to prove all the things that you've always believed in, I was like, okay, bring it on. Because I know that when people have the science, they take in information differently. So I had been doing crazy experiments because I've studied sound and vibration for about 45 years. I was doing sound baths in my home, 40 years ago when people were like, what is this? And I have a room that looks like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory of toys with tubes of 440 hertz. They're aligned to your chakras, et cetera, et cetera. But I was getting brave and bringing into the corporate world my understanding of the mysteries of life, which much of it is about the fact that we're all vibrating atoms. And so no wonder I got into this when I saw someone bombarding cancer cells under a microscope, a jazz musician, who had figured out what notes and how to create resonant frequency and blowing up the cancer cell. And I've taken all the money I've made, or not all, but a lot of the money I've made in the corporate world to be able to hop on a plane to France and study with this man. And so that was 25 years ago, I think. And so the book really gives some of the science of how we are wired for the arts, and the arts are those things that express, allow us to creatively express. But sound works on a cellular level, and in fact, I told you there's this new study. This just came out yesterday. A 2025 study from McGill University shows how our brain rhythms actually sync with sound to co-create emotion, movement, and meaning, shedding new light on the neuroscience of music and what makes music powerful. And the headline is, we just don't hear music, we become it. And I was just at a research conference around some of these issues, and literally they are changing live blood and cells with music.
Does it have to resonate at a certain frequency? Like, how do I, that's...
Yeah, well, my experience, because is that the body takes in, one of the people I studied with had a very, because then I made it my hobby to study with, and everything from, in ancient times, that's why the monks and Gregorian chants, it was literally sonic massage for their organs by doing these chants. I mean, they knew that, right? But I made it my life's mission to kind of study all of the different modalities, from that to electronics to tuning forks. But the body takes in, so there's many methods, but at the end of the day, it's amazing, the body takes in what it needs. So for example, when I was trained to work at tuning forks at different acupuncture points that relate to different meridians, and one of the men I studied with had a real linear approach, which was, the liver meridian, you want to use this note at this point. But it's amazing when you hit the tuning fork on I use a hockey puck instead of my knees to save them, and you put it at that point, you feel whether the person either sucks in that frequency, that note, or the vibration still stays in my finger. So I believe the body takes in what it needs. So I mean, we're getting very esoteric here, but I essentially believe that we have an original blueprint that's a vibratory blueprint, and then so we're designed to be whole, and then all kinds of things, emotional things kick in, things in the air kick in, and it gets us off balance. And so the idea is to get that original vibration back in you. Another man I studied with, Dr. Jeff Thompson, is able to find your fundamental frequency at which you resonate. And in fact, it's the last story I'll tell.
No, please keep going.
No, but when I first got in the corporate world, because I was an artist that never wanted to be in the corporate world, it kind of happened by accident. And I walked in and the company was saying, you, and you're a team. And I'm going, no, they're not. They have no connection. Like, I don't know. And I would watch, and 3 people would brainstorm, and nothing would happen. They'd be like, you brainstorm and figure it out. But then these 4 people would spiral to a new place, like within 2 hours. Brilliant. And I said, wow, they're on the same wavelength, and they're not on the same wavelength. And so I called my sound guy, and I said, okay, can I get people on the same wavelength? He said, you're crazy. What do you mean? I said, well, I mean, I can't just keep working with these same 4 people. Like, how do I get everyone on the same wavelength? So he literally came in. He said, I don't know, let's try. So he came in with machinery where, and this was 25, 30 years ago, where you did not ask an employee to open their mouth and go, ah, and hold a tone. But I convinced 12 people of my employees to open their mouth, because they're creative, so they're open to it. And he recorded the frequency range of each of their voices, because your tone is your DNA. It's actually the imprints are all in there. And then we looked and we found where's a place where those 12 people resonate. So let's say it was F sharp 32.4 hertz, right? Because, so everyone has a range, right? You see what I mean? And so if you take 12 bars, there's a place where naturally, a couple of places where everyone can get to. So we took that frequency, embedded it in music in octaves up and down, and he gave me the disc and he said, play this when you all come to work in the morning.
Does it sound like a chord or like one tone?
No, it was actually music. You didn't even hear. It was hidden. It was embedded in frequencies up and down. It sounded like music. And so at the time, I was head of design of Mattel toys I did all the girls' toys. And so in the studio in the morning, I would put on the CD. And in fact, it's great because I have a stack now. I was just cleaning out my house of like 3 years of 12 different people's fundamental frequency, 12 groups of 12. And we'd play it, and we'd start to create these ideas, toys for kids. And I'm very tuned to energy, but within 45 minutes, you could feel, the concept of entrainment where cuckoo clocks start swinging the same way? Like at a certain amount of time, things can entrain with others. So because all of our brains were capable of getting to that frequency, after about 45 minutes, we were locked in that phase. We were on the same wavelength. And what I'll leave you with is I ended up winning the Chairman's Award for Sustainability of the whole company because the toys that got created that way won parenting awards. Go figure. Because because the frequency, it shows how when we co-create together and we're on the same wavelength, we can do remarkable things. But that was a long answer to tuning forks.
Should we all just...
Yeah. But
have you ever listened to Kay Tempest's Hold Your Own?
Hold Your Own?
Yeah, the song. Put it on your Spotify right now. It is that song. It's an organ. Starts it. I think it's an organ or a synth of some type. I mean, it makes me cry like that. Yeah, I don't know the science behind that, but there is something. That was the first song that I connected to that I was like, there's something else here.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have to listen to it.
Yeah.
Well, one of my other teachers had recorded when we're in our mother's uterus, we are a little nugget of mass to a lot of liquid, and sound gets amplified by bone and water the most. And so he made a recording of what it sounds like to be in utero. We are in a sonic, this is why we're so emotional with music, I believe. We're in a sonic symphony during those 9 months because it gets amplified based on the relationship of amount of mass to water by, I think it was 10,000 times. So your mother's heartbeat is the drums, the circulatory system is the strings, and he played it for all of us. And you are like immersed in this incredible sonic world of music. During the time they tell us...
Who is this that did this?
It was one of my teachers, Don Estes, I think. I have to look up years ago. But he played it for his students, and it was profound. And then when you heard that, you realized why music moves us and why even it's so important. I have one grandson, about to have another, and I tell my daughter, it's a certain amount of months that the kids actually remember the music that was played. If you're a pregnant woman, and I think it's starting in the because the ears develop before the eyes. So I think music is powerful on so many levels, just so many levels, and we're coming back to understand it.
Well, in your book, you talk about dance and that helping Parkinson's and then music therapy and helping, obviously, Alzheimer's and things like that. Because I remember my piano teacher, who I've spoken about, she passed away from complications of Alzheimer's. But when I would visit her in her home at the end, she could still play the piano, which is, she couldn't speak, but she could play, Bach and Greek, and it was crazy.
Yeah. Well, my co-author said immediately, she said that myself and my husband should make our favorite song playlists of it and make sure we each have it. So if we ever fall into a coma or anything, is to play that, because it will, and it's because music, now without invading the brain, we could see what goes on. And that's why we wrote the book at this time, because music, and especially non-rehearsed music, when you're doing like jazz, or it lights up even more parts of the brain. But the reason it's so good when you're in a coma to get you out is it's the only thing, it's being held in another area of the brain beyond just memory. So if your memory is gone, it like defaults to this other area. So it's fascinating, but I think I was telling you I was a drummer and I was a dancer for like 12 years. So it makes sense when you've embodied this, right? And now there's the science to tell us why it's so important. And these things are accessible and don't cost any money. I mean, dancing, listening to music.
Dance parties, you've all had morning dance parties that, get that, your endorphins going and your dopamine going. And
the collective, what happens to the collective when you're in an audience together, listening to music or dancing together? I think we interviewed in the book David Burns, and he was talking about how you can use it for good like everything else, or evil, like soldiers marching together. It gets your brains entrained. And we don't do a lot, and I think that's why probably in the old days, square dancing, things to get people aligned. But yeah, so what you do is so important. How do you read the audio? With DJing, it's kind of you being able to pick up on the pulse of what's going on, because it feels like you have to be in the flow state for yourself, your own creativity, but you also have to be aware enough to be able to know when you need to change or click.
Oof, yeah, I'll answer this in a few ways. A lot of it is preparation, which I have to tap into the masculine side of myself for that. Prepare, practice, color inside the lines, learn every note, understand, so that when you go out on stage, you can throw it all away. But you can't throw it away until you know all of it.
Yeah.
Intuitively, you can feel that without thinking about it. So, when I prepare I play the piano when I DJ, and that part is improvisational, and I try to tap into the feminine energy when I enter the stage. But, beforehand with the actual DJing part of it, with the CDJs, and I try to prep a crate that's just flows energetically from, low to high, and then I can sort of pull from that source. I think that I feel really, really lucky that what's started to form on my dance floors that I get to play for, the front rows have become full of women. It's been such a cool thing to see. It really started as my career has grown. Like, it's more and more women in the front row, and I tap into them. Man, the power and the source that they made me cry, that they provide for me is like, I can feel them being like, when you're in your power, I'm in my power. And so I just sort of try to feed that. It's hard to explain in words, but that's what I'm trying to lean into when I go out and play.
Yeah, beautiful. And they must know that. That's probably why they run to the front, right? It's like a total like okay, a bit of a codependence in a great way, right?
One of the coolest was maybe my third show, like maybe ever post-pandemic, and it was in DC, and yes, and I played, and I opened up for Diplo, which is funny, and I was walking through the crowd afterwards, and this woman comes up to me, and she says, "I've been coming to this venue for a decade, and I've never seen a woman play here. And she said, I don't want to be a DJ or producer or anything, but seeing you made me feel like I could go home and do anything. And I was like, that is why I exist. That is why I wasn't drawn to be a producer. I wanted to do it because I didn't see myself represented in that, and I wanted to have more people empower themselves through whatever they wanted to do. And so it's been so cool to like see a mirror of that in the shows.
And I'm sure you went through some hard times to get there.
No, it was a piece of cake. Yeah, for me, the hard times were more, I guess this is, I'm lucky enough to say this, where it was, my own battles in my head. I didn't necessarily I had great experiences with male producers. I've had a lot of encouragement and support by the male community, but it was visual representation, not seeing, I was so lucky to be raised by parents who were like, you can do anything and you can be anything. I mean, the older I get, the more I see how rare that is.
Yeah, and didn't your father tell you something specifically?
He's told me a lot of things. He's told me a lot of things.
I remember on the call that inspired you, I thought was great.
I remember when I first was asked to join this all-female electronic band, I called him about it, and he said, you don't have golden handcuffs right now. You don't have kids. You can leap into trying things right now. Go do that. Yeah, but I was in the studio and I was reading an article about Grimes, actually, and how she produced her own music, and she was really vocal about that. And this light bulb went off for me because I had never even thought I could be in that role because I didn't see anybody else that looked like me in that role. Subconsciously, how deeply that affects, my belief in my ability to do things.
Yep.
So I wanted to do that. I mean, I wasn't really drawn to it, but I was just like, damn it, I wanted this huge, intense moment for me that Grimes gave me through an article. I wanted to provide that for other people.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that, because the problem is that often we don't see someone like us, so we think we can't do it.
How do you exist in the tech world? Like, what did you have to overcome to do that?
Well, I've always been a designer, so product design. Everything from I worked for Calvin Klein in the early days, Swatch Watch, Mattel Toys. I never want to design the same thing twice, because life to me is an adventure, and I want to take my ethos and principles with me and apply it to these different categories. So I fell into technology. I was always a futurist, even the things I think about, but I was brought on to fix Google Glass when they had launched the first edition. And I remember when I got the call, I said, why me? I forgot, my resume was so long. They said, well, you designed eyewear for 7 years and you've run innovation. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I forgot. That's on page 4.
I want to get there in life. Oh, I forgot I did that.
This is what happens when you get older. But anyway, but I am so glad I got this. It's been 11 years, and we ended up, that second edition of Glass wasn't ready for real people yet, and that was 11 years ago, so we gave it to industry. But then they said, wait a minute, you're the one that understands making physical things, which I call magic. I mean, it's making something out of nothing. And so my team does, I'm very grateful, we've done all the Pixel phones, earbuds, watches, so all the hardware. But yeah, I bring that up because the percent of women in technology, and women, as I tell some of the women that I mentor, because here's what I would see sometimes, and I won't just say Google at other companies. Women come into a company, they want to succeed, they look around them, and they start to follow the models of what they see around them. And I'm like, oh my God, the universe put us in the workplace to ask different questions. And it's like, if you start becoming, and again, no judgment. I mean, I'm about balance, right? We need all the masculine tools and all the feminine tools in our toolbox. And we need men and we need women. And it's not one or the other, it's both and. But if one group comes in and they're the exception and feel like there's not enough of them, and so I realized a lot of it, because women often are scattered, especially in large companies. They may be 1%, but the best thing we could do would be make time for them to connect, because when they connect, to realize you're not alone. Yeah, because like-minded needs like-minded. We have to support each other. But if I would tell them, if you change who you are or behave differently, you're not helping the cause. You're not helping to balance things.
I remember I was one of my first tours I did, our teams wanted us to do a photo shoot before, and it was a tour with a male producer. And I showed up at the photo shoot dressed identical to him. And I was this moment of like, whoa, in order to, what I thought, make it in this industry, I started to adapt myself to look like the man in order to be taken seriously, in order for people to think I actually made my music, in order, for people to think I knew how to operate the gear. And it was just like, oh, this is not why I exist in this space. And it was a really intense light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
But something I still struggle with is balancing the feminine and masculine, because to get to a place where I'm able to sustain myself in this career, I've really had to focus on the masculine. I really had to focus on the doing, and it sort of ate me whole. And now I'm in this place where I'm trying to be embodied again and find the balance of how do you switch from that intuitive feminine energy into the doing of, whatever you learn, putting that into action. How do you balance that?
Well, that goes to the both and, the not either or. And I think depending on what body we're embodied in, it's like now I see everything in terms of technology, but we become, we're born with a certain amount of software. We come fully loaded with one or the other, and then life's mission is to gain the skills in some ways of the other, and then be able to, like I said, use all the tools in the toolbox. I know...
do you compartmentalize hours in your day for one or the other, or do you just feel, when to be...
No, I think you have to feel into when to use what. Like once so you're past the hard part. You proved yourself with some of the masculine skills to get where you got to, but you have got to be you. Because, but sometimes we have to not change who we are, but play into a different language, always for the good of the whole to get there. And that's what sometimes women recede, right? Or they don't have the ability to alter sometimes what they need to do. But then when you get there, like you've earned the credibility, and now you need to be a model for who you really are, and let it loose, girl.
I think that the one thing I'll credit myself for is, even though I haven't quite figured that out, I have surrounded myself with amazing women. And I just want to be in their energy. You're one of them. Where I can try to learn as much as I can, and I'm lucky enough to have a lot of powerful women in this space.
Well, speaking of women, tell me about FEMME HOUSE.
No problem.
Do you like to talk about that?
I hate it. No, FEMME HOUSE is my why. So yes, I can talk about this all day long. It is the nonprofit I started when I started entering this space, the electronic music space, to teach women and gender expansive individuals how to produce music, or the technical aspects of making music, engineering, production, sound design. And I remember when I started it, I was working with a team at the time who, they thought first develop LP Giobbi and then start something, and that's when people will, support it and join it. And I knew in my intuition at the time that I needed this in order to make LP exist, in order to support, my growth in this, and in order to surround myself with people that that looked like me, and that kept me going, and that kept me getting on airplanes, and that kept me in the studio. And, it's definitely, it's my why.
Cool. So, speaking, you and I spoke a little bit online about intuition and data. And I do believe, and I've had to use this sometimes when pushed to be only data-driven, that intuition, everything we take in, 95% of it actually goes into our subconscious, and only 5% goes into our cognitive mind. So when you get an intuitive hit, it's actually coming from more data than when you are working from the cognitive mind. So just use that line. If anyone ever questions your intuition, say that's actually coming from a place of more data than you have in your frontal lobe or your cognitive mind. Yeah.
I think the one thing about FEMME HOUSE that's been really interesting for me over the years is a year and a half ago, I jumped into, we do our workshops and courses online. So I jumped into a session, and the cameras were on the session, and everybody looked like me. And I was like, oh no, this is all white women. So my co-founder, her mix-a-lot, Lauren Spalding, she's a Black queer woman, and she moved herself into the role of DEI and making sure that we're bringing in more educators that are, in the BIPOC community. And the work she's done, I just want to shout her out, is incredible. And the different genres of music that she's brought in, and the people who have felt safe in our community now because of her, it's been really inspiring to see.
And I heard you say in the beginning you kind of have a preconceived set, right, going in, and then you may
then sometimes
it.
I'm like, oh, I'm way wrong. Let me just blow this whole thing up.
Yeah. But it's so interesting because with psychedelics and plant medicine, this whole idea of set and setting has come up, and what role the music plays in it. And I do think that you can take people on a journey just through music and the way you bring them along with your sets.
I think the first part of that is what I've learned, because I've gone in there like, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do. And especially in dance music and dance music culture, which is something I've fallen so in love with, is first you have to get them to trust you. Mm-hmm. First you have to get them to believe in you collectively, and then you can push them. Mm-hmm. And that's been a really interesting learning curve for me. Maybe playing a little bit safe at first, and then sort of slowly seeing. It's like when you're coming up on psychedelics. Like kind of it's a journey. It's a slow process, and then once you know that they're on your side, you can really do a lot.
Yeah. So once you have them in your spell, you can it's like
my witchcraft is working.
It's like Aikido. You take your enemy with you, right? And then. So now that you're in this position, what are your dreams and aspirations, both for yourself and for the collective? A little small question to end with.
Ooh. Whoa, my brain is, there's a lot of programming going on back here. Honestly, I think my biggest goal right now is to feel embodied and to be present in the journey. I spent so many years focused on something outside of myself. And I just want to enjoy this ride and be in my body to enjoy it. So that's my biggest goal now. For the collective, harmony, peace, acceptance, forgiveness, love.
Yeah, well, I think our job is all to be embodied and use our senses more, because the sensorial nature of life. There's a great quote by Julie Bolte Taylor that says, we're thinking beings that have learned to feel, but we're actually feeling beings that have learned to think. And if you just take that in for a minute, I know it changed my world when I first heard that, because I get this, I'm not clairvoyant, I get a chill when things are true. And for so long we've been walking around thinking beings, and once in a while giving us a few minutes to feel. And actually through the work and through writing this book, I now know we have been designed to be feeling beings because of the sensorial nature of how we're wired first. And so we have to get back to that. And as I always say, machines have sensors, but they don't have sensory systems. And there's a difference. And so there are things that, because we've been operating like machines, I think, a little bit, ever since the Industrial Revolution, focused on efficiency, productivity, and we've pushed aside some of the sensorial nature of life, and with that comes a lot of joy. And it is time that we really embody that and go back in and understand.
You know what made me do that when reading your book is that I never read, is it Mary Oliver's poem, Geese? And I was reading that the other night on some airplane, going into some other club, and I could feel my body just yearning for the forest and yearning for mountains. And I don't even know what I was reading. It was a rhythmic experience, and I felt so tuned into not my mind.
Well, 98.8% of the time humans have inhabited the planet, we lived in nature. It's only like 0.2% of our time on this planet that we've lived in the built environment. So it is our nature to be in nature, and nature is the most neuroaesthetic place there is, meaning it alivens our senses, because think about it, everything comes alive. It's smell, it's temperature, it's shape, it's color, it's sound. It's the place you can walk into the forest and all of those sensory systems are alive, which is why, you know, it lowers people's blood pressure. Amazing hormones flood. So, yeah, you could go in the forest, you could start dancing and listening to music. I mean, there are some very easy solves for this. Anyway, I think we would love to take some questions. Are there any?
Don't be shy.
Yes.
Do you happen to have a maybe more convenient methodology for synchronizing creative working groups?
Oh, you don't want to have everyone open their mouth and get a piece of equipment?
Or that, but yeah, what would be kind of what you suggest in the modern environment? I don't know.
Yeah, well, so I do things, and I do think the future of offices, and my co-author and I just did a talk to like 6,000 HR people in companies and did a thing about what if the future. And we showed these environments that people are putting together. There's a group called Chromasonic in LA that has developed software where you see music and hear colors, and it's these beautiful shapes that you walk into, and you have to get out of your cognitive mind, so you get in your body. It like forces you to go to this place of being embodied because your cognitive mind can't make sense of it. So we were talking to the group saying in the future in companies, you know, in companies we have to start, first of all, finding the right rhythm. There's a great book that I think it just came out by Natalie Nixon. She talks about rigor and wonder. It's like we've been in rigor, and no one connects, and it has to be the way our brains work with the default mode network. We have to have time. No wonder we don't have a lot of innovation happening to take everything we're taking in and make sense of it. So I think the future is this. In companies, we have to find a way to create this rhythm between rigor and wonder or daydreaming. And even if we have to put people in, have them in a company walk through this art installation where you're forced into your body, that may be what we have to do. There's also, I always bring in art activities or dancing together. I have someone in my team who's a great DJ, and whenever we can, we have, you know, Philip crank it up, because dancing together or making art
Go
together.
Philip.
Yeah, or making art together really connects people at another level, because you're getting out of that transactional mindset. In companies, we are so transaction focused. So, and you'll also, actually, there was an organization, I sat on the board, the International Board for Play, because play is doing something, the definition is doing something different than you do every day without a preconceived outcome. Because everything we do now is very preconceived outcome. And so giving people time to play is how you come to innovation and discovery. But we're so driven toward outcomes that what people don't realize is the better way to get to those outcomes is to give people playtime. So all those are little hints as to, in my mind, how and this is all science, right? We have to stop doing what we've been doing. Like I said, that all comes from the Industrial Revolution, and rethink based on how we understand the brain works, how we understand us being feeling beings. Because we do have to be more innovative now. We have to use our sense of innovation and imagination to be able to co-create back with the machines. And really figure out what it is to be human. And like I said, part of being human is these sensory systems that we have, this ability to imagine And so I'm thrilled that we're going to be forced to exercise these muscles that I don't believe we've exercised.
How will we be forced?
Because of machines, AI coming in and taking some of the rational things off our plate. I mean, I really feel, yeah, let AI do some of the rational things. So what are we going to do that's irrational?
So awesome. It's so amazing that you exist in the corporate world of technology, right? I mean, this is incredible.
I've come out of the closet here. Don't tell them. They don't know. Don't get me fired. They don't know
You're
who's
giving me
working for them. Any other questions? Yes?
Have you done any research around art and neurodivergence?
Well, we know that we interviewed in the book the people at Creative Growth in Oakland that works with only neurodivergent folks. And the only thing we can say is the ability, they told us stories about, some neurodivergent folks that couldn't speak after going through many art programs. They just were never given a way to express themselves because they express differently. So we haven't done any research, but we interviewed, or Susan hasn't, my co-author, but we interviewed Creative Growth, and there's it's in the book, but they talk about, or else you can just Google Creative Growth, and I think there's some stories there about the folks that they worked with. But I think, we might find that neurodivergent, someday we're not even using that word anymore. It's just unique ways of being. But the point is to be open to, and I think one of the best categories AI might help us in is in learning, because you could tailor make, because my team brought in a bunch of neurodivergent folks and actually asked them, what would you want your AI to do? And it was fascinating, the ideas, we co-brainstormed with them, the ideas they came up with that would really help them that we hadn't thought of, because I think you have to hear it from their perspective, was amazing because of the learning differences and styles in learning that we can probably be able to deliver. You have 4 more seconds, I think. Oh. Oh, okay, wait 1 second. Don't fight, whatever you do.
No,
we want peace in the world.
No, of course. Sorry, I got the microphone, so it was taking a minute.
Oh, well, there you go. Whoever has, it's like the talking stick from indigenous tribes. Whoever has the stick is in charge.
I have the tuning fork. Just a quick question, because you talked about the same wavelength within a team, and I would love to hear you talk about same wavelength, but still kind of having people on diverse wavelengths, or kind of how do you reconcile those things? Because you do want those two, right?
Yeah, so let me tell you, I believe that creativity comes from diversity. If you don't have diversity, you don't have creativity. Whenever I get stuck, I look at the universe and the natural world. I mean, the natural world has how many variations of plants and flowers? There's a reason for that. So I was just talking about getting them on the same wavelength so that we were then able to spiral to our own unique places, meaning getting to a level where then we all had a language that we could use, but it's absolutely imperative. Absolutely imperative. In fact, with all the DE&I push, I've always run creative teams my whole life, and so having divergent teams was never an issue because it was the natural order. You look for that. And I look for people that don't even that have many hobbies, because I believe it's diversity also in what you do. Like you did classical music, and then if you've done only the same thing your entire life and you have no other things you do, because I don't care whether you skydive, go fishing, or that experience will give you a different way of looking at your core skill set. So I always look for not only diversity in people, where they come from, ethnicity, background, but also in interests. because I think it gives you different ways, different perspectives. And I think the future is going to be all about, to solve the problems of our times, we're going to a place, and they say that the next generation is not going to have one job. You know, they're going to have multi-jobs at the same time because of this diversity. Like I love, you know, bioengineering, we're going to have scientists working alongside of designers. So you're going to need these different perspectives. And I think we have to change the way we educate people. It used to be in my day, pick a swim lane. What do you want to be when you grow up? But now it's going to be better to be, you know, what are the things that interest you? And you don't have to pick one swim lane. You have to evolve. And we become new, every 7 years, we're new cells, we're new people. One more.
I got the mic.
Okay. All's fair.
Well, I love how you said earlier that the science kind of validated what you have always been doing. And you mentioned esoteric, and I actually got an aura reading this February, and it was I put my hand on, and you could digitally see it. And it seems like technology is kind of elevating some of the esoteric stuff that we know.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when it comes to technology and more esoteric stuff, other interesting things that you have or what you're getting excited about in that side of the equation?
Yeah, so what you're talking about is like biophotons. You can now start to see coming the light that comes off of our hands, because we are light beings. And so now there is, I think Fritz Popp talked about this and developed the thing you put, my acupuncture has it, where you put it on the steel plate and you actually get a printout. And you can be diagnosed based on that because it's the light that you're emanating. That world is so speeding up. I was just for the weekend with a woman who's a medium who can bring people from the other side through. And she was paired with a scientist who's been studying these mediums. And now with technology, they can tell what's going on in the brains of these folks that can connect with the other side. And it's amazing. They're shutting off a part of their brain, their cognitive mind. And we're all capable of connecting, but we've got the monkey mind going on. So technology, and I think what we're going to have to be careful of in the future, there's a lot of tools that are being sold to put you in different brain states. And so it's really about weeding through what really works. But they are coming together. Like you would never have seen a weekend with a seer, a medium, who brings people through the other side, and a neuroscientist giving a class at the same time. And it was so that we're now beginning to understand this is not woo-woo stuff. And I think as we move from the materialistic world to the quantum world, all of these things are going to become so clear and so much more understood. And so if we have to use equipment to show people that there's light coming from their bodies, so be it, right? So,
is your aura purple? It's an Almost Famous joke.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming.
On that note, thank you so much. That was so educational.
I'm looking forward to dancing in the front row.